Good evening, dear listeners. As the world outside gently quiets and the stars begin to twinkle in the vast expanse above, we invite you to settle in and allow your mind to drift into a state of serene relaxation. In this tranquil space, we will embark on a journey through time, exploring a topic that may, at first glance, seem rather mundane: the intricacies of tax collection procedures in the Byzantine Empire. Now, you might wonder how such a subject could possibly lull you into a restful sleep. After all, tax collection is often associated with complexities and concerns, yet we will approach it with a soft, soothing lens. The Byzantine Empire, with its rich tapestry of history, culture, and governance, provides a backdrop that may surprise you with its depth and nuance. As we delve into this seemingly dull domain, let us embrace the rhythm of the narrative, allowing the gentle flow of information to wrap around you like a cozy blanket. Tonight, we will begin by painting a picture of the Byzantine Empire itself, its vastness, its people, and the bustling life within its cities. We will explore how taxation was not merely a means to fill the coffers of the empire but an intricate web of social responsibility and governance. You will hear about the various types of taxes that were levied, from land taxes to trade tariffs, and how these were intricately tied to the lives of ordinary citizens. As we navigate through the procedures of tax collection, we will encounter the individuals who played a role in this process, the tax collectors, known as publicani. You may find yourself lulled by the steady cadence of their responsibilities, the meticulous records they kept, and the challenges they faced in ensuring fairness. We will also reflect upon the relationship between the citizens and the state, the balance of duty and expectation that marked their interactions. In our exploration, we will touch upon the reforms instituted by various emperors, aiming to streamline and improve the tax system. These efforts reveal a fascinating glimpse into the governance of the time and how it evolved through the centuries. With each detail, we will uncover the layers of history, gently guiding you deeper into a state of calm. As we draw closer to the conclusion of our journey, we will reflect upon the legacy of Byzantine tax collection and how it influenced later systems in different cultures. Through this narrative, we will not only uncover the dullness associated with tax collection but also the quiet stories of resilience, adaptation, and the very essence of societal structure that it represents. So, dear listeners, let the weight of the day slip away, and allow the soothing words to wash over you. Close your eyes if you wish, and take a deep breath. Inhale the peace of this moment, and exhale any lingering tension. As we transition into the heart of our exploration, may the gentle cadence of history guide you into a restful slumber, where dreams of the Byzantine Empire softly cradle you in their embrace. Now, let us step into the realm of the past, where the whispers of history await to share their secrets. Relax and enjoy as we unfold the story of Byzantine tax collection procedures, a tale that, while seemingly dull, holds the potential for profound tranquility. The history of tax collection procedures in the Byzantine Empire is a topic that, while seemingly mundane, provides a window into the administrative complexities and local governance of one of history's most enduring civilizations. The origins of Byzantine tax collection can be traced back to the Roman Empire, wherein the foundation for tax collection was laid. The Roman tax system, characterized by its reliance on various forms of taxation, including land taxes, tributum, poll taxes, capitatio, and customs duties, portorium, served as a blueprint for subsequent Byzantine practices. The earliest historical records pertaining to Byzantine tax collection can be found in the Code of Emperor Justinian I, which was compiled in 529 CE. This compilation, known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, established a set of legal frameworks, including regulations concerning taxation. The capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, located on the Bosporus Strait, served as a prominent hub for tax collection activities due to its strategic location and economic significance. The architecture of Constantinople during this period was marked by grand structures such as the Hagia Sophia, completed in 537 CE, which not only served as a religious center but also as a symbol of imperial authority, reinforcing the importance of a strong administrative apparatus to manage tax revenues. One of the central figures in the evolution of Byzantine tax policy was Emperor Heraclius, who reigned from 610 to 641 CE. His administration faced significant challenges, including military expenditures due to conflicts with the Persian Empire and later the rise of Islamic forces. In response, Heraclius implemented reforms to streamline the tax system, which included the introduction of the capitatio tax on individuals, based on their wealth and social status. This reform was particularly significant as it replaced the previous land tax system, which had become increasingly difficult to administer due to the empire's shifting borders and the loss of agricultural lands. The Byzantine tax collection system was administered through a complex hierarchy of officials, known as prepositus or logothetes, who were responsible for the collection of taxes within specific regions known as demata. The demata were military and administrative districts established during the 7th century, which allowed for more localized governance. The logothetes, often appointed from the local aristocracy, oversaw the collection of taxes and maintained records of transactions. Their daily routines consisted of engaging with local landowners, merchants, and citizens to assess their tax liabilities, often requiring the use of detailed accounting ledgers. Tax collection procedures typically involved several steps. Firstly, a preliminary assessment of a region's agricultural output and economic activity was conducted to determine the appropriate tax rates. This assessment involved the use of land surveys and census data, which were meticulously recorded in the epistolae, or tax rolls. These rolls provided a comprehensive overview of the taxable properties and the individuals responsible for payment. The accuracy of these records was paramount, as discrepancies could lead to disputes and challenges to imperial authority. Once assessments were completed, tax collectors, known as telenarii, were dispatched to collect the taxes. Their daily routines included traveling to various towns and villages, where they would conduct public meetings to inform citizens of their tax obligations. Architectural details of local administrative buildings, often situated in the central squares of towns, facilitated these gatherings, providing a space for the telenarii to present tax decrees and answer questions from the populace. The tax collectors were required to possess a thorough understanding of the tax codes, and their role was often met with resistance from local populations, who viewed taxation as a burden. The Byzantine Empire employed a variety of taxes, including the chrysaboulan, a tax on gold and silver, and the portorium, a tax on goods transported through ports. The collection of these taxes was critical for the empire's ability to finance military campaigns and maintain public infrastructure, including roads, aqueducts, and public baths, which were essential for urban life. The maintenance of such infrastructure was often funded through a combination of direct taxation and indirect taxation, such as tariffs on goods, which were levied at various points of entry into the empire. The architectural features of tax collection centers were designed to facilitate the efficient management of tax revenue. Many such centers were adorned with inscriptions detailing the laws governing taxation and the obligations of citizens. These inscriptions served both as a legal reminder and a form of propaganda, reinforcing the power of the emperor and the necessity of tax compliance. The layout of these buildings typically included a main hall for public gatherings, offices for tax officials, and storage areas for collected funds and goods. The introduction of the pragmatic sanction by Emperor Leo VI in the late 9th century further formalized tax collection procedures. This decree mandated that all tax collectors be held accountable for their actions, establishing penalties for malfeasance and ensuring that tax revenues were directed towards imperial coffers rather than personal enrichment. Daily routines for tax collectors became increasingly bureaucratic, requiring them to submit detailed reports to higher authorities, which were meticulously reviewed for accuracy. The imposition of such regulations increased the administrative workload but also contributed to greater transparency in the tax collection process. The Byzantine tax system experienced significant fluctuations over the centuries, particularly during times of crisis, such as the Arab conquests in the 7th century and the eventual fragmentation of territories during the 11th century. During these periods, the empire's reliance on taxation intensified as it sought to replenish its military and administrative resources. The imposition of new taxes, often perceived as excessive by the populace, led to numerous revolts and civil disturbances, further complicating the already intricate tax collection procedures. By the late 11th century, the introduction of the akritos tax, a form of land tax based on the amount of land held by a citizen, reflected the empire's need to adapt its tax policies in response to demographic and economic changes. Tax collectors were charged with the responsibility of monitoring land ownership, which necessitated a more sophisticated understanding of property rights and land use. The daily routines of tax collectors became increasingly intertwined with local land disputes, requiring them to navigate complex social dynamics and negotiate tax liabilities with landowners. Tax collection in the Byzantine Empire also included the collection of ecclesiastical taxes, known as ecclesiastikoi. These taxes were levied on church properties and were often used to fund religious institutions and public works. The relationship between the state and the church played a significant role in the establishment of tax policies, as emperors sought to maintain support from ecclesiastical authorities. Daily interactions between tax collectors and church officials were essential for the successful administration of these taxes, often resulting in negotiations over tax exemptions and contributions to imperial projects. The architecture of church buildings, such as the Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna, which was completed in 547 CE, reflects the close relationship between religion and taxation during this period. The intricate mosaics and lavish decorations of such structures served to legitimize the collection of taxes by portraying the divine sanction of the emperor's authority. The architectural grandeur of these venues contrasted starkly with the often tedious and bureaucratic nature of tax collection procedures. As the Byzantine Empire entered its final centuries, the complexity of tax collection continued to evolve. The establishment of the episkopoi, or bishops, as tax collectors in certain regions during the 12th century illustrated the increasing intertwining of religious and temporal powers. These ecclesiastical tax collectors were responsible for gathering taxes on behalf of both the church and the state, blurring the lines between religious obligation and civic duty. Their daily routines were characterized by extensive interactions with local communities, where they promoted tax compliance through sermons and appeals to civic responsibility. The Byzantine tax collection system ultimately faced significant challenges as the empire weakened due to external pressures from invading forces, such as the Crusaders and the Ottoman Turks. The financial strain on the imperial coffers led to the imposition of higher taxes, which exacerbated social tensions and contributed to the empire's decline. While the formal structures of tax collection continued to exist, the effectiveness of these procedures diminished as local governance became increasingly fragmented. In conclusion, the history of Byzantine tax collection procedures is marked by a slow and deliberate evolution, characterized by administrative reforms, bureaucratic complexities, and the interplay between local governance and imperial authority. The architectural details of tax collection centers, the daily routines of tax collectors, and the intricate legal frameworks established by emperors all contributed to a system that, while often perceived as dull and tedious, was essential for the functioning of the Byzantine state. The legacy of Byzantine tax collection practices can still be discerned in contemporary tax systems, reflecting the enduring influence of this historical period on modern governance and administration. The Byzantine Empire, known for its complex administrative systems, developed a variety of construction methods and materials that were integral to its tax collection procedures. These methods were not only focused on the construction of physical infrastructure, such as tax offices and storage facilities for collected revenues, but also on the broader framework within which these operations were carried out. The construction of tax collection centers, which were often referred to as agorae or public squares, began in earnest during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE. These agorae were constructed using local materials, primarily limestone and brick, which were abundant in the regions surrounding Constantinople. The average size of such structures was approximately 100 square meters, allowing for sufficient space to accommodate tax officials and the necessary administrative functions. The walls were typically built to a thickness of at least 0.5 meters to withstand both the test of time and the potential for vandalism or unrest, which was not uncommon. In terms of roofing, Byzantine architects often employed a technique known as barrel vaulting, which allowed for the creation of spacious interiors without the need for excessive columns. This construction method was particularly advantageous in maintaining the integrity of the structure while providing an open area for the public and tax officials to conduct their business. The roofs were usually covered with tiles made from clay, measuring approximately 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters, which were both practical and aesthetically pleasing. Maintenance procedures for these buildings were established as part of a systematic approach to ensure the longevity of the tax collection infrastructure. Regular inspection schedules were instituted, typically occurring biannually, during which officials would assess the structural integrity of the buildings. Repairs were made promptly to any structural weaknesses identified during these inspections. For instance, if a crack measuring more than 1 centimeter in width was detected, it would necessitate immediate attention, typically involving the application of a lime-based mortar, which was favored for its durability and adhesive properties. The financial records associated with tax collection were meticulously maintained, reflecting a level of bureaucratic precision that characterized the Byzantine administrative system. The primary financial document utilized was the logismos, a ledger that itemized all incoming and outgoing financial transactions. Each logismos was expected to adhere to a standardized format, measuring approximately 25 centimeters in width and 30 centimeters in height, and would typically contain at least 100 pages of detailed entries. The costs associated with tax collection and infrastructure maintenance were often substantial. For instance, during the fiscal year of 610 CE, an estimated 500 solidi, a gold coin, were allocated for the maintenance of tax offices in the provinces of Asia Minor alone. This figure represented a considerable portion of the provincial budget, emphasizing the importance of maintaining efficient tax collection facilities. Personnel involved in the tax collection process were categorized into several distinct roles, each with specific job descriptions that delineated their responsibilities. The primary role was that of the strategos, or prefect, who oversaw the tax collection process within a given district. This individual was expected to have a comprehensive understanding of local economies and the ability to interact effectively with both local merchants and citizens. The strategos typically earned a salary of 12 solidi per month, which was considered competitive for the period. Supporting the strategos were the logothetai, or clerks, who were responsible for maintaining the financial records and processing tax payments. These clerks were often literate and trained in accounting practices, with a focus on ensuring accuracy in the logismos. Their salaries varied but generally ranged from 4 to 6 solidi per month, reflecting their specialized skills and the demand for their services. In addition to these roles, there were also tax collectors known as apographi, who were tasked with physically collecting taxes from citizens. These individuals were often required to travel throughout their designated regions, sometimes covering distances of over 50 kilometers in a single day. The role demanded a level of physical endurance and the ability to engage with the local populace, often requiring the apographi to possess a degree of diplomatic skill to mitigate potential resistance to tax collection. Technical specifications related to the tools and equipment used in tax collection were also standardized to streamline the process. For example, the collection of taxes in kind, such as agricultural products, necessitated the use of measuring devices like the metron, which was a standardized measure equivalent to approximately 2.5 liters. This ensured consistency in the quantity of goods collected and helped prevent disputes between tax collectors and citizens. Moreover, The Byzantine tax collection process was influenced by various laws and regulations, which were codified in the Corpus Juris Civilis under Justinian I. These legal frameworks provided detailed guidelines regarding tax rates, collection procedures, and the penalties for non-compliance. For instance, specific rates were established for land taxes, which typically ranged from 10% to 20% of the assessed value, depending on the region and type of agriculture practiced. This system of taxation was designed to be equitable, though it often led to grievances among the peasantry, particularly in times of poor harvests. The Byzantine Empire also employed a sophisticated system of communication to facilitate tax collection across its vast territories. The use of couriers, who were responsible for transporting messages and financial records, was critical in ensuring that information flowed efficiently between provincial tax offices and the central administration in Constantinople. These couriers often traveled on horseback, covering distances of up to 80 kilometers per day, and were equipped with a set of standardized documents, including tax assessments and collection orders. In summary, the Byzantine tax collection procedures were characterized by a systematic approach to construction, maintenance, record-keeping, personnel management, and communication. The methods and materials used in the construction of tax collection centers were reflective of the empire's architectural practices, while maintenance procedures ensured the longevity of these infrastructures. Financial records were kept with meticulous detail, and personnel roles were clearly defined, contributing to the overall efficiency of the tax collection system. Technical specifications related to tools and regulations further standardized the process, allowing for a level of organization that would influence subsequent tax systems in the centuries to follow. With this comprehensive framework in place, the Byzantine tax collection procedures were not only a reflection of the empire's administrative capabilities but also a testament to its enduring legacy in the realm of public finance and governance. The meticulous nature of these practices continues to serve as a foundation for contemporary tax systems, underscoring the significance of the Byzantine approach to taxation in shaping modern fiscal policies. The construction methods and materials utilized in Byzantine tax collection facilities were paramount to the operational efficacy of the taxation system. The foundational structures of these facilities were predominantly constructed from locally sourced limestone, which was favored for its durability and relative ease of acquisition. The use of limestone, particularly in regions such as Bithynia and Cappadocia, can be traced back to the 4th century AD, with notable examples dating as early as the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD. Walls were typically erected to a height of approximately 3.5 meters, providing sufficient security for the financial records contained within. In addition to limestone, timber was extensively employed for roof supports and internal frameworks. The timber used was often derived from nearby forests, with oak and pine being the most prevalent choices. Roofs were generally constructed using a series of wooden beams, spanning 4 to 5 meters, covered with clay tiles. The average lifespan of these roofs was estimated at approximately 30 years, necessitating periodic replacement and repair. Maintenance procedures for these tax collection facilities were meticulously outlined in various administrative texts. Regular inspections conducted by appointed officials were mandated, with specific attention given to structural integrity and the preservation of financial records. Such inspections typically occurred biannually, coinciding with the spring and autumn equinoxes, to ensure that the facilities were in optimal condition prior to the peak tax collection periods of the year. Maintenance tasks included the repair of leaking roofs, which often required the replacement of damaged clay tiles, and the reinforcement of walls, which, due to the regional fluctuations in humidity, could suffer from erosion. Financial records and costs associated with tax collection were rigorously documented. The Byzantine Empire instituted a standardized system for the maintenance of financial records, known as the logos. This system was introduced in the late 6th century and mandated the recording of all monetary transactions, including tax assessments, collections, and disbursements. The records were maintained in ledger books known as biblion, which were bound in leather and typically measured 30 centimeters by 40 centimeters. Each book contained approximately 200 pages, with entries recorded in a highly formalized script that adhered to strict guidelines regarding spacing and alignment. The costs associated with tax collection were multifaceted, encompassing not only the direct expenses of maintaining facilities but also the remuneration of personnel involved in the process. For example, the average annual salary of a tax collector, or lipatai, in the late 10th century was approximately 6 solidi, which constituted a modest income relative to other public service roles. This remuneration was often supplemented by a commission based on the volume of taxes collected, which incentivized efficiency and diligence among collectors. Personnel and job descriptions within the Byzantine tax collection framework were delineated with precision. The hierarchy typically began with the praefectus urbi, who oversaw the tax collection operations within major cities, and descended through various ranks including the procurator and the rector. Each position had specific duties, ranging from the administration of tax assessments to the enforcement of collection procedures. The praefectus urbi was responsible for setting tax rates based on an extensive analysis of land productivity and population density, often utilizing population census data collected every 5 years. At the local level, tax collectors were expected to engage directly with taxpayers, conducting assessments of property and income. This process often involved a physical inspection of landholdings and the recording of agricultural yields, which were particularly important in agrarian communities where taxes were often levied in kind. The tax collectors utilized a tool known as the measure, which was a cylindrical container of standardized dimensions, typically 2 liters in volume, used to quantify the amount of grain or produce owed. Technical specifications associated with the tax collection process also merit attention. Tax assessments were typically calculated using a system of ratios, with land values assessed based on their productive capacity. For instance, a plot of arable land yielding 100 modii of grain was assessed at a rate of 10% for taxation purposes, resulting in a tax obligation of 10 modii per annum. The introduction of standardized units of measurement, such as the modius, approximately 8.5 liters, facilitated a more equitable and systematic approach to taxation across the empire. In addition to agricultural taxes, Byzantine tax collection encompassed a variety of other levies, including trade tariffs and property taxes. The implementation of a trade tax, known as the Portorium, was instituted during the reign of Emperor Heraclius, 610 to 641 AD, and required merchants to pay a percentage of their sales revenue at various trade hubs. This system was meticulously documented, with individual transactions recorded in a separate ledger dedicated to trade taxes, which measured approximately 25 centimeters by 35 centimeters in size. Furthermore, the Byzantine tax system was characterized by its adaptability in response to economic fluctuations. For example, during periods of famine or economic downturn, the imperial administration would occasionally implement temporary tax reductions or deferments, as recorded in the edicts of Emperor Leo VI, 886 to 912 AD. Such measures were intended to alleviate the burdens on the populace and maintain social stability. The Byzantine Empire also employed a variety of auxiliary personnel to support tax collection efforts. These included scribes, who were responsible for maintaining accurate records, and guards, who ensured the security of tax collection facilities. Scribes typically underwent training in literacy and numeracy, often beginning their apprenticeships at the age of 12, and were expected to develop proficiency in both Greek and Latin script. Guards, on the other hand, were often recruited from local militias, with training focusing on basic security procedures and the safeguarding of financial records. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection procedures were underpinned by a complex interplay of construction methods, maintenance protocols, detailed financial record-keeping, clearly defined personnel roles, and rigorous technical specifications. These elements not only facilitated the efficient operation of the taxation system but also established a framework that would influence subsequent fiscal policies in various regions throughout history. The meticulous nature of these practices underscores the significance of the Byzantine approach to taxation, which remains a critical area of study for understanding the evolution of modern tax systems. The construction methods and materials utilized in Byzantine tax collection facilities were paramount to the operational efficacy of the taxation system. The foundational structures of these facilities were predominantly constructed from locally sourced limestone, which was favored for its durability and relative ease of acquisition. The use of limestone, particularly in regions such as Bithynia and Cappadocia, can be traced back to the 4th century AD, with notable examples dating as early as the reign of Emperor Constantine I, reigned 306 to 337 AD. These early structures were often designed not only for function but also to convey the authority of the Byzantine state. In terms of architectural styles, many tax collection facilities featured a blend of Roman and early Christian influences, characterized by large arched doorways and high ceilings that allowed for efficient airflow and natural illumination. For instance, the tax office in Nicaea, established in 325 AD, showed a distinct Roman architectural influence, with its grand atrium and detailed column work. This facility was specifically designed to manage the tax revenues generated from agricultural produce in Bithynia, one of the empire's most fertile regions. By the 6th century, under the reign of Emperor Justinian I, reigned 527 to 565 AD, the construction of tax collection facilities evolved significantly. The use of concrete, which was a Roman innovation, became more prevalent. Justinian's construction projects, such as the famed Hagia Sophia completed in 537 AD, demonstrated the empire's advanced engineering capabilities, and this knowledge trickled down to the construction of tax facilities. By incorporating thicker walls and intricate vaulting techniques, these tax offices became not only secure storage for tax revenues but also symbols of imperial power. The materials used in these structures were not limited to limestone. In regions where volcanic rock was abundant, such as in parts of Anatolia, builders utilized tuff, a lightweight and insulating stone, which provided good thermal properties, essential for preserving documents and goods stored within. For example, a tax facility in the city of Tyana, built around 570 AD, utilized both limestone and tuff to create a robust structure capable of withstanding earthquakes, a common hazard in the region. Moreover, the layout of these tax facilities often included multiple rooms designated for specific functions. Typically, there was a large central hall for the collection of taxes, a secure area for the storage of collected goods, and administrative offices where scribes recorded transactions. A case study from the tax office in Constantinople, operational during the early 8th century, reveals that the central hall measured approximately 50 feet by 30 feet, allowing for the accommodation of numerous tax collectors and merchants simultaneously. The Byzantine taxation system was not only about the physical buildings but also about the processes that took place within these facilities. Tax collectors known as logothetes were responsible for ensuring that taxes were collected fairly and efficiently. They employed a range of measurements, such as the modius, a unit for measuring grain, to ensure accurate taxation based on agricultural yields. The granaries attached to many tax facilities played a crucial role, serving as temporary storage for harvested goods before they were officially recorded and taxed. Historically, the Byzantine Empire faced numerous challenges regarding tax collection, especially during times of war or economic downturns. In the 7th century, the empire was heavily impacted by the Arab conquests, leading to a significant reduction in available tax revenue. In response, the Byzantine administration fortified tax facilities and implemented reforms to streamline tax collection processes. For example, in 692 AD, the Quinisext Council introduced measures to simplify tax assessments, which were often convoluted and prone to corruption. Furthermore, the Byzantine tax system also encouraged the development of local administration. Various regions were empowered to manage their own tax collection, which led to the establishment of smaller, local tax offices. These smaller facilities often mirrored the architectural styles of their larger counterparts but were more modest in scale. The use of local materials and labor made these facilities more cost-effective and efficient, contributing to the overall resilience of the Byzantine taxation system. In conclusion, the construction methods and materials utilized in Byzantine tax collection facilities were integral to the empire's ability to maintain fiscal stability. The evolution of these structures from the 4th century through the 8th century illustrates not only advancements in architectural techniques but also the socio-economic contexts in which they operated. By examining specific examples and case studies, it becomes evident that these facilities played a critical role in the administrative framework of the Byzantine Empire, reflecting the complexities and challenges of governance during a dynamic period of history. The construction methods and materials employed in the tax collection facilities of the Byzantine Empire reveal a commitment to durability and functionality, reflecting the administrative necessities of the time. The primary materials utilized in the construction of these facilities included locally sourced limestone, which was favored for its abundance and ease of quarrying. The limestone was often combined with mortar made from lime and sand, creating robust walls that could withstand the test of time. In terms of construction techniques, the Byzantine builders frequently employed the use of arches and vaults, which not only provided structural integrity but also allowed for larger, open interior spaces conducive to administrative activities. The typical layout of a tax collection facility included a central hall, often measuring approximately 30 feet by 40 feet, flanked by smaller offices for clerical staff. The roofs were commonly constructed using wooden beams, covered with red clay tiles that were standard in the region, measuring approximately 2 feet by 1 foot each. Maintenance procedures for these facilities were equally unremarkable in their systematic approach. Regular inspections were mandated, occurring biannually, to assess both structural integrity and the condition of the facilities. These inspections would include a thorough examination of the walls for cracks, the roofs for leaks, and the floors for wear. The costs associated with maintenance were recorded meticulously in ledgers, detailing every expense incurred for repairs. Commonly, the upkeep of a single facility could amount to approximately 150 solidi per year, a sum that was allocated from the central treasury. Financial records were a critical component of the tax collection process, involving meticulous documentation practices that were standardized across the empire. Each facility maintained a series of ledgers, often bound in leather and measuring 12 inches by 18 inches, wherein every transaction was recorded. The records included detailed accounts of tax revenues collected, which were categorized by type, land tax, poll tax, and customs duties, among others. For example, in the year 1025, a typical tax collection facility might report a total revenue of 2,500 solidi from land taxes alone. The ledgers also documented expenses related to personnel and operational costs. It is worth noting that the Byzantine Empire employed a range of personnel within these facilities, each with specific job descriptions that facilitated the tax collection process. Clerks, often numbering between 3 to 5 per facility, were responsible for maintaining records and processing tax payments. Their duties included verifying taxpayer identities, calculating tax liabilities based on property assessments, and issuing receipts, which were vital for both accountability and transparency. The role of the overseer, or epitropos, was particularly significant. Appointed by the local governor, the epitropos was tasked with the overall management of the facility, ensuring compliance with imperial tax policies and overseeing the clerical staff. This position was typically filled by individuals with prior administrative experience, often requiring a minimum of 5 years of service in a related role. The epitropos would receive an annual salary of approximately 400 solidi, a figure that underscored the importance of the position within the Byzantine bureaucratic hierarchy. Technical specifications of the facilities also merit examination, particularly regarding the systems employed for the secure storage of tax revenues. Each facility was equipped with reinforced wooden chests, often measuring 4 feet in length and 2 feet in width, secured with heavy iron locks and chains. These chests were typically housed in a designated treasury room, which was further fortified with barred windows and a heavy door, ensuring that the collected revenues remained safeguarded against theft and misappropriation. In addition to physical security measures, the Byzantine tax collection process relied heavily on a network of reporting and accountability. Each facility was required to submit quarterly reports to the provincial governor, detailing the amounts collected and any discrepancies encountered. These reports were often accompanied by an additional document known as the hypothesis, which served as a summary of the financial activities for the preceding quarter. The hypothesis would include any notes on irregularities, such as instances of taxpayer disputes or challenges in revenue collection, which could then be addressed in subsequent governance sessions. The complexities of tax collection procedures also extended to the assessment of taxes, which involved a detailed evaluation process. Tax assessors, known as katasquasts, were employed to appraise properties, often utilizing a standardized formula based on the type of land and its productivity. For example, arable land was typically assessed at a rate of 10% of its estimated annual yield, while pastoral land was assessed at a lower rate of 5%. This assessment process was conducted annually, typically in the spring months of April and May, allowing for adjustments based on seasonal changes and agricultural productivity. Moreover, the interaction between tax collectors and the populace was characterized by formal protocols. Tax collectors, often referred to as teleni, were required to wear identifiable garments, commonly a tunic in the imperial colors of purple and gold, to signify their authority. Their duties involved not only the collection of taxes but also the resolution of disputes that arose during the process, which necessitated a thorough understanding of tax laws and the ability to negotiate with taxpayers. The Byzantine tax system also incorporated various exemptions and reductions, reflecting the empire's attempt to balance fiscal responsibilities with social equity. Certain classes of individuals, such as veterans and clergy, were often granted exemptions from specific taxes, a practice that further complicated the revenue collection landscape. These exemptions were documented in the same ledgers used for general tax collection, necessitating careful management to avoid discrepancies in the fiscal records. In the broader context of the Byzantine economy, tax collection procedures played a pivotal role in the financial stability of the empire. The revenues generated through these operations supported not only the administrative framework but also the military and public works initiatives that were essential for maintaining the empire's territorial integrity. For instance, in the year 1071, it was reported that approximately 60% of the total tax revenue was allocated toward military expenditures, underscoring the critical relationship between tax collection and the empire's defense strategy. In conclusion, the Byzantine Empire's tax collection procedures, encompassing construction methods, maintenance practices, financial record keeping, personnel roles, and technical specifications, reveal a highly organized and systematic approach to governance. Each aspect of this process was intricately designed to ensure the efficient collection and management of revenues, reflecting the complexities of a society striving to maintain order and stability during a period of significant historical transformation. The legacy of these procedures, though often regarded as mundane, contributed to the enduring structure of Byzantine administration that influenced subsequent governance models in the region. The construction methods and materials utilized in Byzantine tax collection facilities were characterized by a systematic approach aimed at longevity and functionality. Beginning in the 4th century CE, the Byzantine Empire saw an increased need for purpose-built structures to manage the complexities of taxation. Most tax offices, known as demosia, were constructed using local materials, primarily limestone, which was quarried from the surrounding regions. The use of limestone was favored due to its accessibility and the relative ease with which it could be worked. In terms of construction methods, the Byzantine builders employed techniques that had been refined over centuries. The walls of these tax offices were typically at least 1 meter thick, built to withstand both the elements and the pressures of bureaucratic oversight. The foundations were laid deep, often reaching depths of 2 to 3 meters, to ensure stability. Roofs were constructed with wooden beams sourced from local forests, covered with terracotta tiles, which provided adequate protection from rain. Maintenance procedures for these structures were equally methodical. After the initiation of any new tax office, regular inspections were mandated, typically occurring every 2 years. These inspections were conducted by local magistrates who assessed the structural integrity of the buildings and ensured that they were equipped with functional administrative tools, such as writing tablets and storage for financial records. The costs associated with maintenance were documented meticulously, with records indicating that expenditures ranged from 50 to 200 solidi per year, depending on the size and condition of the facility. In the fiscal year of 528 CE, for example, the maintenance of the tax office in Constantinople necessitated the replacing of several roof tiles, resulting in an expenditure of 75 solidi, while the tax office in Thessalonica required masonry repairs costing 120 solidi. These records were compiled in ledger books, often written in Greek, detailing every transaction and expenditure related to building maintenance. Financial records and costs associated with tax collection were rigorously maintained, reflecting the Byzantine Empire's commitment to bureaucratic accountability. The empire utilized a dual-entry bookkeeping system, which had evolved by the 10th century. This system allowed for tracking both incoming and outgoing funds with a level of precision that was notable for its time. Each individual tax collector, known as a telon, was responsible for maintaining their own records, which were subject to review by a supervisor, known as a logothete. By the end of the 9th century, the standard procedures for financial record-keeping included daily, monthly, and yearly summaries of tax receipts. The daily records required a detailed account of each transaction, specifying the type of tax collected, be it land tax, poll tax, or trade tax. Monthly summaries were collated at the end of each month, with annual reports submitted in January, detailing the cumulative financial health of the tax office. The records were stored in wooden chests, often reinforced with iron locks, to prevent unauthorized access. Personnel involved in the operation of tax collection were categorized into several distinct roles, each with specific job descriptions. The primary personnel included the telon, who was the main tax collector, the logothete, who handled financial records, and several clerks who assisted in the administrative duties. Each telon was required to undergo a rigorous training program, which lasted approximately 6 months, focusing on the legal aspects of taxation, arithmetic, and the logistics of tax collection. Telons were expected to maintain a high level of integrity, as they were entrusted with large sums of money and public trust. Their salaries varied depending on the region, but by the late 10th century, a typical telon in Thessalonica earned approximately 250 solidi per year, while those in Constantinople could earn upwards of 400 solidi due to the increased volume of transactions. The logothetes, who worked closely with the telons, were tasked with ensuring that all financial transactions were recorded accurately. They also had the authority to audit the telon's accounts, a practice that was vital for maintaining transparency within the tax collection system. Their salaries were commensurate with their responsibilities, typically ranging from 300 to 500 solidi per year. This disparity in income underscored the hierarchical nature of Byzantine bureaucracy. The clerks, often young men from the local populace, served as the backbone of the tax office. Their duties included copying documents, managing correspondence, and organizing records. As clerks were typically less experienced, they earned a significantly lower salary, averaging around 150 solidi annually. The clerks were often promoted to logothete positions after gaining sufficient experience, which further contributed to the continuity and stability of the tax collection process. Technical specifications for the tax collection process adhered to a rigid framework established by the state. Each tax office was equipped with specific tools and materials necessary for efficient operation. A typical office would contain a set of measuring instruments, including weights and balances, to ensure fair assessments of taxable goods. The standard weights used were approximately 1 kilogram and 2 kilograms, crafted from bronze to guarantee accuracy. In addition to measuring tools, tax offices were provided with writing instruments, primarily reed pens and ink made from soot and water, which were stored in clay pots. The parchment used for official documents was produced from animal hides, with each sheet measuring approximately 30 centimeters by 40 centimeters, allowing for ample space for detailed record keeping. The technical specifications of tax assessments also included precise guidelines for the evaluation of land and property. Land was measured in plethra, with 1 plethron equating to approximately 1,000 square meters. Tax rates varied by region and type of land use, with agricultural land generally subjected to a tax rate of 10% of the estimated yield. By the 11th century, the Byzantine tax collection system had evolved to incorporate a more sophisticated approach to revenue generation. The introduction of the paratoktos system allowed for the collection of taxes in advance based on projected revenues, which required extensive forecasting and statistical analysis. This innovation necessitated additional training for tax personnel, as they were now expected to utilize historical data to predict future trends accurately. The implementation of the paratoktos system also led to the establishment of new records and methodologies. Tax offices began to maintain detailed demographic records, including the number of households and the types of occupations within their jurisdiction. This information was critical for accurately assessing potential tax revenue and ensuring compliance among the populace. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection procedures, while often dismissed as mundane, were underpinned by a complex web of construction methods, maintenance routines, financial record-keeping, personnel management, and technical specifications that together formed the backbone of the empire's administrative system. The diligence with which these procedures were executed not only ensured the efficient collection of taxes but also contributed to the stability and longevity of Byzantine governance. The evolution of these practices over centuries reflects an adaptability to changing economic circumstances and illustrates the importance of bureaucratic integrity in maintaining the empire's fiscal health. Ultimately, the systems established during this period laid the groundwork for future governance models across the region, underscoring the enduring legacy of Byzantine administrative practices. The Dull History of Byzantine Tax Collection Procedures, Part 6. The Byzantine Empire, renowned for its intricate bureaucracy and multifaceted administrative systems, naturally extended these complexities into its tax collection procedures. In this installment, we will delve into the regional variations and comparisons of tax collection, the evolution of these practices through different time periods, the bureaucratic regulations and laws that govern these processes, the supply chain and logistics involved, and the methods of record-keeping that ensured accurate taxation. Each of these aspects contributes to the elaborate tapestry of Byzantine fiscal management. Regional variations and comparisons. The vast expanse of the Byzantine Empire, stretching from the Balkans to parts of the Middle East and North Africa, necessitated a tax system that could accommodate local customs and economic realities. Consequently, regional variations in tax collection procedures were not only common but fundamental to the empire's strategy to ensure compliance and revenue generation. In provinces such as Egypt, which was a major agricultural hub, the tax system was heavily reliant on the collection of grain. The harvest was meticulously assessed, and taxes were often levied in kind, meaning that farmers would pay a portion of their produce rather than currency. This practice was facilitated through a complex network of local officials known as agricultural assessors, who were responsible for evaluating the yield of various lands. These assessors often faced challenges due to local variations in crop production, weather conditions, and the presence of irrigation systems that could significantly alter agricultural output. In stark contrast, regions such as Thrace, which were more urbanized and commercially oriented, relied heavily on monetary taxation. Here, taxes were collected in currency and were often based on property value or trade activity. The urban centers demanded an entirely different bureaucratic apparatus, as merchants and traders were assessed based on their business dealings and economic contributions. The presence of marketplaces and trade routes further complicated tax collection, as officials had to account for transient populations and fluctuating economic conditions. Comparatively, the taxation system in the province of Asia Minor involved a hybrid approach. It incorporated both agricultural taxes and commercial levies, as the region was characterized by a mix of farming communities and emerging cities. The Byzantine tax collectors in this region often had to adapt their strategies based on local economic conditions, which could vary dramatically from one village to another. This adaptability was crucial for maintaining the loyalty of provincial populations, who may have resisted oppressive taxation. Evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine tax collection system was not static. It evolved significantly from the establishment of the Byzantine Empire in the 4th century until its eventual decline in the 15th century. The early period of Byzantine taxation, particularly during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, was characterized by a centralized approach that sought to streamline tax collection through an extensive bureaucratic network. Justinian introduced the capitatio tax, which was a head tax levied on individuals, alongside the tributum, a land tax based on property ownership. This era laid the groundwork for future tax reforms. As the empire entered the Middle Byzantine period, approximately 843–1204 AD, the tax collection system became increasingly decentralized. The rise of local aristocrats and landowners led to the development of a system known as pronoia, where land was granted in exchange for military service. This shift resulted in a more complex relationship between the central authority and local power holders, as tax revenues began to be collected by these local elites rather than directly by imperial officials. Consequently, the efficiency of tax collection varied greatly, as local lords often had their own interests at heart and could manipulate tax obligations to benefit their own estates. During the late Byzantine period, particularly in the 13th to 15th centuries, the empire faced external pressures from rival states and internal strife. This tumultuous environment led to further adaptations in tax collection, with an increased emphasis on emergency taxes and extraordinary levies to fund military campaigns. The eklegi, or extraordinary taxes, became a means for the empire to respond to immediate fiscal needs, often resulting in resentment among the populace. The reliance on such taxes could destabilize the already precarious economic conditions in many regions, leading to a cycle of discontent and rebellion. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire's tax collection procedures were underpinned by a vast array of regulations and laws that governed the actions of tax collectors and the obligations of taxpayers. The legal framework surrounding taxation was meticulously codified, with the Codex Justinianus serving as a foundational document that outlined various fiscal responsibilities. These laws not only specified the rates and types of taxes but also delineated penalties for evasion and misconduct. Tax collectors, known as logothetes, were required to adhere to stringent guidelines, including rules on how to assess property values and calculate taxes owed. To ensure compliance, the empire established a series of checks and balances that included regular audits and assessments conducted by higher-ranking officials. This oversight was critical in preventing abuse and corruption, although it was not always successful, as local tax collectors sometimes exploited their positions for personal gain. In addition to regulations, there were also numerous exemptions and special provisions for certain groups. For example, the clergy and monastic communities often enjoyed tax privileges as a means of encouraging religious institutions. These exemptions created a complex web of obligations, leading to disputes and negotiations between local populations and the imperial authorities. The legal intricacies of Byzantine taxation reflect the broader socio-political relationships within the empire, as different groups sought to navigate the often cumbersome bureaucracy to secure favorable terms. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire were intricate and multifaceted. The process began with the preparation of tax assessments, which involved gathering data from local communities about agricultural production, property values, and trade activities. This information was then compiled and sent to regional tax offices, where it was reviewed and verified before being forwarded to the imperial treasury. The movement of goods, particularly in terms of tax payments made in kind, required a robust supply chain. In agricultural regions, for instance, grain taxes needed to be collected during harvest seasons and transported to central granaries. This logistics operation necessitated the coordination of transport routes and the availability of wagons and laborers. Local officials often devised intricate schedules to ensure that tax deliveries coincided with market days or local festivals, minimizing disruption to the community's agricultural activities. Moreover, the collection of monetary taxes involved the transfer of coins, which were minted in central locations and needed to be distributed throughout the provinces. This task was complicated by the presence of counterfeit coins and the fluctuating value of currency over time. The Byzantine authorities implemented a series of measures to combat counterfeiting, including regular inspections of coinage and the establishment of a network of trusted merchants who could facilitate secure transactions. The logistics of tax collection also intersected with issues of communication. The Byzantine Empire, with its vast territories, relied on a series of messenger routes to convey information between local tax offices and the central administration. The use of couriers, often mounted on horseback, was essential for maintaining the flow of information regarding tax assessments, collection deadlines, and changes in regulations. This network of communication was vital for responding to local grievances, as it allowed for a degree of responsiveness in an otherwise rigid bureaucratic system. Record-keeping methods. Accurate record-keeping was a cornerstone of the Byzantine tax collection system. The meticulous documentation of tax assessments, payments, and disputes was essential for maintaining the integrity of the fiscal system. Each province employed scribes who were responsible for maintaining detailed records of tax-related activities, often in the form of scrolls or codices. These records included various forms of documentation, such as tax rolls, assessment sheets, and payment receipts. The tax rolls would list individual taxpayers, their properties, and the amounts owed, while assessment sheets documented the methodology used to determine tax liabilities. Payment receipts, issued upon the collection of taxes, served as proof of payment and were often required for individuals to avoid double taxation. In addition to these primary documents, the Byzantine authorities also implemented a system of ledgers and registers that aggregated tax information at regional and imperial levels. These ledgers, often maintained by the logothetes, provided a comprehensive overview of tax revenues and expenditures, allowing for better budgetary planning and resource allocation. The record-keeping apparatus of the Byzantine Empire was not merely a bureaucratic necessity, it also played a significant role in the empire's legal framework. Disputes over tax assessments could be arbitrated based on the existing records, and the maintenance of accurate documentation was essential for resolving conflicts between taxpayers and officials. The thoroughness of these records reflected the empire's commitment to administrative efficiency, even as it grappled with the challenges of governance across diverse and often unruly territories. Conclusion. The Byzantine Empire's tax collection procedures were marked by remarkable complexity and nuance, shaped by regional variations, evolving practices, and a robust bureaucratic framework. The evolution of these procedures over time reveals the empire's adaptability in the face of changing economic conditions and societal pressures. The meticulous regulations and laws that govern taxation, alongside the logistical challenges of tax collection and the critical importance of record-keeping, underscore the empire's sophisticated administrative capabilities. Ultimately, the history of Byzantine tax collection is a testament to the empire's enduring commitment to maintaining fiscal order amidst the challenges of governance, a narrative that, while perhaps tedious, continues to offer insights into the workings of one of history's most enduring empires. The dull history of Byzantine tax collection procedures. Part 7. Regional variations and comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, known for its complex administrative structure and varied regional characteristics, exhibited significant differences in tax collection practices across its vast territories. The geographical diversity, ranging from the arid landscapes of Anatolia to the lush valleys of Thrace, necessitated tailored tax systems that reflected local economic conditions, agricultural productivity, and demographic factors. In regions like Syria, where agriculture was robust, the tax system was heavily reliant on the land tax, kleros, which was assessed based on the fertility and size of the landholding. Conversely, in the more urbanized areas of Constantinople, tax collection was increasingly focused on trade and commerce, leading to the imposition of customs duties and transaction taxes. The regional variations in tax collection were not merely economic adaptations but also reflected the socio-political landscape of the Byzantine Empire. For instance, areas with a strong presence of the military, such as the themes located on the empire's frontiers, often had different tax obligations due to their strategic importance. Soldiers stationed in these regions were sometimes exempt from certain taxes, or their contributions were adjusted based on their service commitments. Similarly, in regions experiencing unrest or rebellion, tax collection could become a tool of oppression, with authorities imposing heavier burdens to compensate for losses incurred during conflicts. Moreover, the tax collection methods could differ significantly from one region to another. In the provinces of Asia Minor, the system of tax farming was prevalent, where local elites would bid for the right to collect taxes in exchange for a fixed sum paid to the central government. This practice could lead to variations in tax rates as tax farmers sought to maximize their profits, often at the expense of local populations. In contrast, in more remote regions, direct collection by imperial agents was more common, reflecting a need for tighter control over tax revenues and a lower level of trust in local elites. Part 8. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of Byzantine tax collection procedures can be divided into several distinct phases, each marked by key historical events and changes in administrative practices. The early Byzantine period, following the establishment of the empire in the 4th century, was characterized by a relatively straightforward taxation system. The focus was largely on land taxes and a few other forms of revenue, such as the chrysargeron, a tax on trade. However, the need for increased military funding, especially during the Persian Wars and later conflicts with the Slavs and Arabs, necessitated a more complex and diversified taxation structure. By the 7th century, the empire faced significant external pressures, leading to the introduction of new taxes and the refinement of existing ones. The establishment of the thematic system in the mid-7th century was a critical development, as it linked military service with land ownership and taxation. This system not only provided a stable source of revenue but also encouraged agricultural productivity as landowners were incentivized to cultivate their lands effectively to meet tax obligations. As the Byzantine Empire progressed into the Middle Ages, particularly during the 9th and 10th centuries, administrative reforms led to a further evolution of tax collection practices. The introduction of the logothete, a financial officer responsible for overseeing tax collection and fiscal policies, marked a significant shift towards a more bureaucratic and centralized approach to taxation. This period saw the implementation of detailed tax registers, which allowed for more accurate assessments and collections. The tax system became increasingly complex, involving multiple forms of taxation, including taxes on goods, services, and even professions, reflecting a growing economy and a need for diversified revenue streams. The final phase of evolution, occurring during the late Byzantine period, was marked by economic decline and external threats. The empire's ability to collect taxes diminished, leading to reliance on traditional methods and a return to some earlier practices. Tax exemptions became more common for certain groups, particularly religious institutions and the aristocracy, further complicating the tax landscape. This decline in tax revenue would have lasting implications for the empire's stability and governance. Part 9: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine tax collection system was underpinned by a complex web of bureaucratic regulations and laws, which governed every aspect of the process from assessment to collection. The Codex Justinianus, compiled during the reign of Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century, served as a foundational legal framework for tax policies, outlining the rights and responsibilities of both taxpayers and tax collectors. This legal codification was crucial in standardizing tax procedures across the empire and reducing the potential for abuse and corruption. Regulations governing tax collection were highly detailed, specifying everything from the timing of tax assessments to the qualifications required for tax collectors. The role of the tax collector, known as the publican, was both vital and precarious. Publicans were often local elites who could leverage their social status to influence tax assessments, but they were also subject to stringent oversight to prevent malpractice. The Byzantine state implemented checks and balances, requiring publicans to submit detailed reports on collections and to account for discrepancies or losses. Additionally, the implementation of the proedria, or tax exemption laws, created a complex legal landscape where certain individuals or groups could petition for tax relief based on various criteria, including poverty, military service, or religious affiliation. This process could be laborious and required extensive documentation, reflecting the Byzantine bureaucracy's penchant for record-keeping and detailed regulation. The legal framework surrounding taxation also evolved to address emerging issues, such as the rise of trade guilds and the increasing complexity of urban economies. Tax laws were adapted to accommodate these new economic realities, leading to the establishment of distinct categories of taxation for merchants, artisans, and other professionals. This adaptation necessitated ongoing revisions to legal texts, ensuring that the Byzantine tax system remained relevant and responsive to changing societal needs. Part 10: Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistics of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire involved a multifaceted supply chain, which was essential for ensuring that tax revenues were collected efficiently and effectively. The movement of goods, particularly in regions where taxes were assessed on agricultural produce, required a well-organized infrastructure. The Byzantine state invested in roads, bridges, and ports to facilitate the transport of tax goods to central collection points. Local agrarian economies were crucial to this logistical network. Farmers were often required to deliver their tax obligations in kind, meaning that taxes were paid through the provision of goods such as grain, wine, or livestock rather than currency. This practice necessitated a coordinated effort to transport these goods, often involving local cartage systems and transporters who specialized in moving agricultural products to market or to designated tax collection centers. Moreover, the imperial government implemented strict regulations regarding the quality and quantity of goods that could be used for tax payment. For instance, the state would often set specific standards for the type of grain that was acceptable as tax, which helped maintain a consistent quality in the imperial granaries. This regulation ensured that the state could rely on a stable supply of goods for both its own consumption and for trade. The logistics of tax collection also extended to the management of tax offices and personnel. Tax collectors were often accompanied by scribes and clerks who helped maintain accurate records of collections and ensure that proper procedures were followed. The organization of these personnel was crucial, as it allowed for the efficient processing of tax payments and minimized opportunities for corruption or mismanagement. Part 11: Record-keeping methods. Record-keeping was an indispensable aspect of Byzantine tax collection procedures. The meticulous documentation of tax assessments, payments, and exemptions ensured transparency and accountability within the tax system. The Byzantine state employed a variety of methods to maintain these records, reflecting the empire's advanced administrative capabilities. The primary record-keeping methods included the use of wax tablets and papyrus scrolls. Wax tablets were favored for their reusability, allowing tax collectors to record temporary assessments and calculations before finalizing them on more durable materials. These tablets could be easily erased and reused, making them practical for daily operations. Tax collectors would often carry a set of these tablets, enabling them to record transactions on site. For more permanent records, parchment and papyrus were utilized. These materials allowed for the creation of formal tax registers and ledgers, which documented the details of each taxpayer, their obligations, and payment histories. These records were often organized by region and type of tax, facilitating easier access for both tax collectors and auditors. Over time, the accumulation of these records contributed to a vast bureaucratic archive, which served as a historical repository for the empire's economic activities. The Byzantine bureaucracy also employed various forms of accounting methods, such as double-entry bookkeeping, which allowed for more accurate tracking of revenues and expenditures. This method enabled officials to cross-reference tax collections with expenditures, helping to identify discrepancies and ensuring that funds were properly allocated. The use of seals and signatures further authenticated tax documents, which were often required to be presented during audits or disputes. In conclusion, the tax collection procedures of the Byzantine Empire were characterized by a remarkable degree of complexity and adaptability. Regional variations, historical evolution, bureaucratic regulations, logistical considerations, and meticulous record-keeping all played pivotal roles in shaping this intricate system. While the details may seem mundane, they reveal the underlying structures that supported one of history's most enduring empires. As we delve deeper into the labyrinthine world of Byzantine taxation, one can only marvel at the intricate web of policies, practices, and people that sustained this age-old system, despite its inherent tedium. The Dull History of Byzantine Tax Collection Procedures, Part 8. Regional variations and comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, at its zenith, encompassed an extensive geographical area that included diverse regions such as Asia Minor, the Balkans, and parts of the Middle East. Each of these regions exhibited distinctive characteristics that influenced the local tax collection procedures. These regional variations arose from numerous factors, including cultural practices, economic conditions, and the administrative framework established by the central government in Constantinople. In Asia Minor, for instance, tax collection was heavily influenced by agricultural productivity. The fertile plains of the region allowed for the cultivation of grains, olives, and other cash crops, which in turn necessitated an intricate system of taxation based on agricultural output. Farmers were often assessed taxes based on the expected yield of their fields, which required local tax collectors to maintain a keen awareness of agricultural cycles and practices. This led to the establishment of a system known as the Sysakthia, a form of debt relief for farmers unable to meet their tax obligations due to poor harvests, a practice that could vary significantly from one locality to another. Contrastingly, in urban centers like Constantinople, tax collection was markedly different. The city was a hub for trade and commerce, leading to a more complex tax structure that included duties on goods traded within the city and taxes levied on merchants. Urban tax collectors were often more bureaucratic, operating under strict regulations and facing pressure from both the populace and the imperial authorities to meet revenue targets. This urban tax collection relied heavily on the registration of businesses, which required ongoing audits and reviews to ensure compliance. The Balkans presented yet another scenario, where the mountainous terrain and fragmented political landscape led to a decentralized approach to tax collection. Local chieftains and nobility often held significant sway over tax policies, leading to variations in tax rates and collection methods. In some areas, local lords could negotiate tax rates directly with the imperial government, resulting in a patchwork of agreements that were sometimes beneficial to the peasantry but often exacerbated disparities between regions. These regional variations underscore the complexity of Byzantine tax collection and illustrate how local conditions profoundly influenced the implementation of imperial policies. The interplay between central authority and local autonomy was a crucial factor in the overall efficacy of tax collection across the empire. ###evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine tax system underwent significant evolution from its inception in the 4th century to the decline of the empire in the 15th century. Initially, tax collection was relatively straightforward, characterized by a reliance on fixed rates and direct assessments. However, as the empire expanded and the economy became more sophisticated, the tax collection system evolved into a more intricate bureaucracy. In the early Byzantine period, the indition, a 15-year cycle of tax assessment, was instituted. This periodization allowed for systematic reviews of tax obligations and helped stabilize revenue collection. However, as economic conditions fluctuated due to wars, plagues, and natural disasters, adjustments became necessary. The indition system was periodically revised to reflect changing realities, showing a remarkable adaptability in the face of external pressures. By the late Byzantine period, particularly during the 12th century, fiscal administration had grown increasingly complex. The introduction of new taxes, such as the kokkion, a tax on artisans, and the metokion, a tax on monastery lands, reflected an attempt to tap into previously untaxed revenue streams. Furthermore, the centralization of tax collection practices led to the establishment of the logothetes, officials responsible for overseeing financial matters. The role of these officials became increasingly bureaucratic, often leading to protracted debates over tax policy and enforcement, which were exacerbated by the empire's political instability. The decline of the Byzantine Empire in the 14th and 15th centuries brought about further changes, as the constant threat of invasion and internal strife forced the government to rely more heavily on indirect taxation. This led to an increased burden on the populace, often resulting in widespread discontent and resistance to tax collection efforts. ###bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine tax system was underpinned by a complex web of bureaucratic regulations and laws designed to ensure compliance and efficiency. The Ekliga, a legal code established in the 8th century, provided a foundational framework for tax laws, detailing the rights and responsibilities of both tax collectors and taxpayers. It established guidelines for tax assessments, collection methods, and penalties for non-compliance, thus creating a legal basis for the enforcement of tax obligations. One notable regulation was the requirement for tax collectors, known as komerki, to maintain detailed records of their activities. This included not only the amounts collected but also the methods used to assess taxes, which were often based on subjective criteria. The regulatory framework stipulated that tax collectors could face severe penalties for mismanagement or corruption, a measure intended to curtail abuse and ensure public trust in the system. In addition to local regulations, imperial decrees frequently modified tax laws to respond to economic conditions or political pressures. For instance, during times of military crisis, emperors might issue temporary tax relief measures to appease the populace or incentivize agricultural production. Conversely, in times of fiscal shortfall, the central government could enact new taxes or increase existing rates, often leading to unrest among the affected communities. Moreover, the Byzantine tax system also incorporated mechanisms for dispute resolution, allowing taxpayers to appeal assessments they deemed unfair. These appeals were often heard by local magistrates or even higher-ranking officials, which underscored the importance of maintaining a semblance of justice within the tax collection process. The existence of these bureaucratic pathways signifies the Byzantine commitment to an organized system, even amidst the complexities of governance. #Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire were critical to the effective management of its revenue systems. Tax collectors faced numerous challenges as they navigated the physical and bureaucratic landscapes of the empire. The supply chain for tax collection involved not only the movement of goods but also the coordination of personnel, documentation, and schedules. One essential aspect of the logistics involved the transportation of goods for tax collection. In agricultural regions, tax collectors often collected payments in kind, meaning that farmers would provide a portion of their harvest rather than monetary payments. This requirement necessitated a well-organized transport system to move these goods to central storage facilities. The empire invested in road construction and maintenance, particularly during the reign of Justinian I, to facilitate the movement of tax revenues from rural areas to urban centers. These roads, often lined with way stations and inns for travelers, illustrated the Byzantine commitment to efficient logistics. Furthermore, the collection of taxes in urban areas required an entirely different logistical approach. Urban tax collectors needed to coordinate with various merchants and businesses, ensuring that taxes were collected on time and accurately. This often involved establishing a schedule for audits and inspections, which necessitated careful planning and communication among the bureaucrats. The use of written records became indispensable in this context, as meticulous documentation was required to keep track of tax obligations and payments. The role of technology in tax logistics should also be noted. The Byzantine Empire made use of various tools and processes, such as the abacus for calculations and the development of standardized measures for goods, to enhance the efficiency of tax collection. The introduction of standardized coinage further simplified transactions, allowing for easier assessment and collection of monetary taxes. This technological evolution was instrumental in facilitating smoother logistics and minimizing disputes over tax obligations. Record-keeping methods. The Byzantine Empire's tax collection procedures relied heavily on meticulous record-keeping practices. The importance of accurate documentation cannot be overstated, as it formed the backbone of both accountability and transparency in the tax system. Various methods and materials were employed to maintain records, reflecting the empire's organizational sophistication. In the early periods, tax records were often inscribed on wax tablets, which could be reused by scraping off the wax, allowing for cost-effective record-keeping. However, as the volume of transactions increased and the complexity of tax assessments grew, more permanent methods were adopted. Papyrus and parchment became prevalent materials for record-keeping, enabling the creation of extensive tax rolls and ledgers that documented everything from individual assessments to overall revenue flows. The record-keeping process itself was systematic and hierarchical. Local tax collectors were responsible for maintaining their own records, which would subsequently be compiled and submitted to regional authorities. This multi-layered approach to documentation ensured that discrepancies could be traced back to their source, although it also created opportunities for corruption and mismanagement at various levels of the bureaucracy. The integration of record-keeping into the broader administrative framework was further enhanced by the use of standardized forms and templates. These documents often included spaces for critical information such as taxpayer names, assessed amounts, dates of collection, and signatures of both taxpayers and collectors. The introduction of seals, both personal and official, served as an additional layer of verification, further reinforcing the legitimacy of the records. Moreover, the creation of centralized archives in major cities such as Constantinople allowed for the preservation of tax records over longer periods. These archives not only served as repositories of financial data but also as historical documents reflecting the empire's socio-economic conditions. Scholars today often rely on these records to understand the intricacies of Byzantine economic life and governance. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection procedures present a rich tapestry of regional variations, evolving systems, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and record-keeping methodologies. Each of these components interacted within the broader framework of imperial governance, highlighting the complexity and nuance inherent in one of history's most enduring tax systems. As we continue to explore the depths of this seemingly monotonous subject, we uncover a world of detail that reflects the broader historical currents shaping the Byzantine Empire itself. The dull history of Byzantine tax collection procedures. Part 9: Regional Variations and Comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, characterized by its vast geographical expanse and diverse populace, exhibited notable regional variations in its tax collection procedures. These discrepancies were often influenced by local customs, economic conditions, and administrative practices. The empire's division into different administrative units, such as dioceses and themes, contributed to the distinctive nature of tax collection in various regions. For instance, in the agricultural heartland of Anatolia, the tax system was predominantly focused on land taxes, which were assessed based on the fertility of the land and the yield of crops. In contrast, the urban centers such as Constantinople and Antioch relied heavily on trade taxes, reflecting the economic activities of bustling marketplaces and the movement of goods. In the provinces of Thrace and Macedonia, local officials often employed a more decentralized approach to tax collection. Here, the intricate relationship between local elites and the imperial authority played a significant role in mediating tax obligations. Local aristocrats often acted as intermediaries, collecting taxes on behalf of the imperial treasury while simultaneously enforcing local customs and regulations. This arrangement led to a more variable tax burden, as local elites could manipulate assessments to favor their interests, creating disparities that would be perceived as inequitable by the lower classes. Comparatively, the tax collection procedures in the regions bordering the empire, such as the Balkans and the Levant, were often more militarized. The presence of external threats necessitated a more rigorous approach to revenue collection to support military expenditures. Consequently, tax collectors in these regions were known to adopt more aggressive tactics, including the imposition of heavier levies and the use of coercive measures to ensure compliance. In contrast, the relatively peaceful provinces, such as those along the southern coast of Asia Minor, experienced less intrusive tax collection methods, emphasizing voluntary compliance and the negotiation of tax obligations. Part 10: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire can be understood through a chronological lens, reflecting the empire's shifting political, economic, and social landscapes. During the early Byzantine period, approximately 330 to 600 AD, tax collection was characterized by a relatively straightforward system, heavily reliant on land taxes and poll taxes. This simplicity allowed for efficient revenue generation, particularly in agrarian regions where land was the primary source of wealth. However, as the empire expanded and the complexities of governance increased, particularly during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, the tax system underwent significant changes. Justinian's ambitious military campaigns and extensive public works projects necessitated a more sophisticated tax framework. The introduction of the capitatio and tributum systems marked a shift toward a more systematic collection of taxes, where individual assessments were made based on a combination of wealth and income. Such reforms aimed to stabilize the empire's finances but also led to increased public resentment as tax burdens became more pronounced. The Middle Byzantine period, approximately 600–1200 AD, saw further evolution in tax collection methods, particularly following the Arab conquests that disrupted traditional revenue sources. The need to adapt to economic shifts led to the incorporation of new taxes, such as the poll tax, levied on non-Christians, which provided a significant source of income for the imperial treasury. During this era, the Byzantine state began to experiment with new bureaucratic practices, including the delegation of tax collection to local officials, which resulted in varying degrees of efficiency and corruption depending on the region. By the late Byzantine period, approximately 1200 to 1453 AD, the tax system faced immense challenges due to the decline of imperial authority and the rise of regional powers. The fragmentation of the empire led to a patchwork of tax systems, each reflecting the local circumstances and the desperation of local rulers. The traditional bases of taxation, such as land and trade, were increasingly undermined by economic instability and external invasions, prompting a reliance on ad hoc measures such as forced loans and extraordinary levies. Part 11: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine tax system was underpinned by a complex web of bureaucratic regulations and laws that governed every aspect of tax collection. The Codex Justinianus, compiled under Emperor Justinian I, served as a foundational legal framework that codified many of the tax laws that would shape the administration of taxes for centuries. This legal codification provided a semblance of uniformity to tax practices, outlining the responsibilities of tax collectors, the rights of taxpayers, and the procedures for disputing tax assessments. The bureaucratic structure of tax collection was further complicated by the existence of numerous offices and titles, each with specific responsibilities and jurisdictions. The praefectus urbi, for example, was charged with overseeing tax collection in urban centers, while provincial governors, known as strategoi, were responsible for revenue generation in rural areas. The interplay between these officials often resulted in bureaucratic overreach, as tax collectors sought to maximize revenue through aggressive collection practices, leading to widespread dissatisfaction among the populace. Moreover, the Byzantine Empire employed a variety of tax exemptions and reductions, particularly for certain groups such as the clergy and the military. The rationale behind these exemptions was often rooted in social and religious considerations, aiming to bolster loyalty among key societal segments. However, the implementation of these exemptions was fraught with inconsistencies, leading to allegations of favoritism and corruption among tax officials. Part 12: Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistical aspects of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire were often overlooked but played a critical role in the functioning of the overall system. The movement of goods, the transportation of tax revenues, and the distribution of resources were all intricately linked to the efficiency of tax collection procedures. The Byzantine bureaucracy developed a network of supply chains that facilitated the collection and redistribution of tax revenues, ensuring that the imperial treasury received funds in a timely manner. Tax collectors were often required to transport collected revenues to central treasury offices located in major cities, such as Constantinople. This movement of funds necessitated a well-organized logistical framework, which included secure transportation methods and clear accounting practices. The use of couriers, known as hypaspists, was common for the safe and prompt delivery of tax revenues, as these individuals were entrusted with the responsibility of safeguarding large sums of money. Furthermore, the logistics of tax collection were influenced by the seasonal nature of agricultural production. Tax collectors had to time their assessments and collections to coincide with harvest seasons, which necessitated close coordination with local farmers. This reliance on agricultural cycles often created a sense of urgency among tax officials, leading them to adopt more assertive collection tactics during peak agricultural periods. Part 13: Record-keeping methods. An essential aspect of Byzantine tax collection was the meticulous record-keeping methods employed by tax officials. Accurate records were critical for both the assessment of taxes and the management of revenues, ensuring transparency and accountability within the administrative framework. The Byzantine bureaucracy utilized various forms of documentation, including ledgers, scrolls, and codices, to maintain detailed accounts of tax assessments and collections. The process of record-keeping was often labor-intensive, requiring scribes to meticulously document each transaction and maintain up-to-date records. These scribes, typically trained in the art of writing and accounting, operated within bureaucratic offices known as logothetes. The logothetes were responsible for overseeing financial records, ensuring compliance with tax regulations, and resolving disputes that arose from tax assessments. In addition to traditional written records, the Byzantines also employed a range of symbols and shorthand to facilitate efficient record-keeping. This use of mnemonic devices allowed tax collectors to quickly jot down critical information during assessments without the need for extensive documentation. Such practices, while practical, also introduced the potential for errors and misinterpretations, leading to disputes that could escalate into significant conflicts between taxpayers and officials. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection procedures were characterized by regional variations, bureaucratic complexities, evolving laws, logistical challenges, and meticulous record-keeping methods. The dull history of these procedures reveals a system that, while seemingly mundane, was deeply intertwined with the political and economic fabric of the empire. The interplay of local customs, imperial authority, and administrative practices shaped the tax landscape in ways that, despite their tediousness, had far-reaching implications for the stability and sustainability of the Byzantine state. As the empire navigated the myriad challenges of governance, the tax collection system remained an essential, albeit often overlooked, component of its enduring legacy. The Dull History of Byzantine Tax Collection Procedures, Part 10. In the Byzantine Empire, the tax collection process was not merely a matter of gathering revenue, it was an intricate web of bureaucratic procedures, regional variations, and evolving regulations that reflected the complexities of both governance and society. This part of our examination delves deeply into the regional variations and comparisons in tax collection, the evolution of procedures over different time periods, the bureaucratic regulations and laws that govern these activities, the supply chain and logistics involved in the collection of taxes, and the methods employed for record keeping, each component contributing to the overarching, often tedious narrative of Byzantine tax collection. Regional variations and comparisons. The Byzantine Empire was a vast entity, comprising diverse regions with distinct cultures, economies, and administrative practices. This regional diversity significantly affected tax collection procedures. For instance, in the provinces of Anatolia, where agriculture was the predominant economic activity, tax collection was heavily reliant on the tithe, an agricultural tax based on the produce harvested. Farmers were required to pay a percentage of their yield, and this practice necessitated a network of local officials who were familiar with the agricultural calendar and local harvests. Conversely, in urban centers such as Constantinople, taxation focused more on commerce and trade. Merchants and traders were subjected to various taxes, including sales taxes and tariffs on goods entering the city. The bustling marketplaces of Constantinople required a different approach to tax collection, involving more direct oversight by imperial officials and a more elaborate system of record-keeping to track the flow of goods and revenues. The differences extended beyond mere economic activities. Social structures influenced tax collection methods. In regions with a strong military presence, such as Thrace, the tax system often included provisions for military levies and contributions, reflecting the need for funding defense efforts against external threats. This military taxation was viewed as a duty borne by citizens, and the methods of collection often involved local leaders who had the authority to mobilize resources for the empire's defense. These regional disparities in tax collection also had implications for the relationships between the central government and provincial authorities. In some areas, local elites held significant power, and their cooperation was essential for efficient tax collection. In contrast, in regions where the central authority was more robust, local officials acted primarily as agents of imperial will, enforcing tax policies with strict adherence to bureaucratic guidelines. Evolution over different time periods. The Byzantine tax collection system underwent significant transformations from its inception in the early centuries of the empire to its eventual decline. In the early Byzantine period, the tax system was relatively straightforward, primarily focused on land tax and certain duties on trade. This simplicity was partly due to the empire's initial growth phase, where the need for extensive bureaucratic structures was not yet pronounced. However, as the empire expanded and became more complex, particularly during the reign of Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the tax system began to evolve. Justinian introduced reforms aimed at consolidating various taxes into a more coherent system. This included the establishment of the indictation, a 15-year cycle for tax assessments, which sought to standardize the collection process. Additionally, the introduction of the kapniken, a tax on household goods, illustrated an effort to diversify revenue sources and adapt to the changing economic landscape. As the centuries progressed, especially during periods of crisis such as the Plague of Justinian, 541 to 542 CE, and the subsequent Arab invasions, taxation became increasingly burdensome. The empire's need for revenue to fund military campaigns and public works led to the imposition of new taxes and the intensification of existing ones. This era saw the emergence of more complex tax codes and regulations, as the central bureaucracy sought to navigate the challenges of administering a vast empire under duress. By the late Byzantine period, the tax collection system became increasingly decentralized. Local authorities gained more autonomy in tax administration, leading to variations in enforcement and compliance. The rise of the pronoia system, where land was granted to military leaders in exchange for service, further complicated tax relations, as these military elites often negotiated their own tax arrangements with the central government. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by a labyrinth of bureaucratic regulations that governed every aspect of tax collection. These laws were codified in various legal texts, the most notable being the Corpus Juris Civilis, commissioned by Justinian. This compilation included numerous laws pertaining to taxation, outlining the rights and responsibilities of both taxpayers and collectors. One of the key regulations was the Lex Censu, which established procedures for assessing property values. Tax assessors, known as censors, were appointed to evaluate the worth of land and other assets based on established criteria. This process was often fraught with challenges, as it required assessors to possess extensive local knowledge and experience in valuing diverse properties, leading to potential discrepancies and disputes. Moreover, the Byzantine tax code included provisions for tax exemptions and reductions for specific groups, such as the clergy and certain charitable institutions. These exemptions were often justified on theological grounds or as a means to encourage social welfare, although they occasionally led to resentment among lay taxpayers who bore a disproportionate share of the tax burden. The bureaucratic apparatus also established penalties for tax evasion and non-compliance. Tax collectors wielded significant power, often employing harsh measures to ensure compliance, including the confiscation of property or imprisonment. The legal framework surrounding tax collection also provided avenues for appeal, where taxpayers could contest assessments or seek relief from excessive burdens. These legal processes, while intended to ensure fairness, often became convoluted, further entrenching the tedious nature of Byzantine tax administration. Supply chain and logistics. The logistics of tax collection in the Byzantine Empire were a reflection of the empire's administrative sophistication and its challenges. The supply chain involved not only the transport of tax revenues but also the management of resources necessary for collection activities. In agricultural regions, the logistics of tax collection revolved around the harvest cycle. Local officials coordinated with farmers to determine the timing and volume of tax payments, often requiring careful planning to align with harvest seasons. In urban centers, the logistics were more complex. Taxes on trade necessitated the establishment of customs posts and market inspections to monitor compliance. The transport of goods to and from Constantinople involved a network of roads, waterways, and ports, all of which had to be monitored to ensure accurate tax assessment and collection. The Byzantine administration invested in infrastructure to support these logistics, including the construction of roads and the maintenance of harbors. Moreover, the role of transport was critical, as tax revenues were often collected in kind, goods and produce rather than currency. This required a system of storage and distribution, where collected goods would be transported to central depots or markets for sale, creating an additional layer of complexity in the tax collection process. The management of these goods also necessitated careful record keeping to prevent misappropriation or loss during transit. Record keeping methods. The Byzantine tax collection system relied heavily on meticulous record keeping, an essential aspect of maintaining order and accountability in tax administration. Various methods and materials were employed to document tax assessments, payments, and disputes. The use of parchment and wax tablets was common, with officials recording transactions in a clear and systematic manner to ensure accuracy. The logothetes, financial officers, played a vital role in this process, responsible for maintaining ledgers and registers that detailed tax assessments and collections. These records provided a historical account of tax obligations and payments, allowing officials to track compliance over time. The meticulous nature of record keeping was not merely for bureaucratic efficiency, it also served as a means of defense against potential accusations of corruption or mismanagement. In addition to written records, the use of seals became an integral part of tax documentation. Seals, often made of wax and stamped with the insignia of local authorities, served as a form of authentication for tax documents. These seals helped to prevent forgery and ensured that only authorized individuals could alter or access tax records. The introduction of more sophisticated accounting techniques later in the Byzantine period, including double-entry bookkeeping, further enhanced the record-keeping process. These advancements allowed for more accurate tracking of revenues and expenditures, reflecting a growing awareness of the need for financial oversight in an increasingly complex economic environment. In conclusion, the history of Byzantine tax collection procedures is a multifaceted narrative that encompasses regional variations, bureaucratic regulations, logistical challenges, and record-keeping practices. Each of these elements contributes to an understanding of how the Byzantine Empire managed its financial resources amid the complexities of governance and societal demands. As we continue to explore this tedious yet essential aspect of Byzantine history, we recognize the enduring impact of these tax collection procedures on the empire's stability and longevity, providing insights into the interplay between administration, economy, and society. ###The dull history of Byzantine tax collection procedures. The Byzantine Empire, with its sprawling territories and complex administrative structure, had a tax collection system that was both intricate and often tedious. This system evolved over centuries, shaped by historical events, economic conditions, and the need for a stable revenue stream to support the imperial government. While the overarching narrative of Byzantine tax collection is often overshadowed by more thrilling accounts of political intrigue and military conquests, the minutiae of tax procedures offer a fascinating glimpse into the everyday operations of this vast empire. ###Minor historical figures and their roles. In the Byzantine Empire, tax collection was not solely the domain of emperors or high-ranking officials. Numerous minor historical figures played critical roles in the effective functioning of the tax system. One such figure was the logothete, a minor bureaucrat often responsible for overseeing financial matters, including tax collection. The logothete's role was characterized by meticulous record-keeping and the enforcement of tax laws. These individuals were essential in maintaining the delicate balance between the state's need for revenue and the populace's ability to pay. Another significant yet often overlooked figure was the prefectus, a local governor responsible for collecting taxes in specific regions. The prefectus functioned as a crucial intermediary between the central government and the local populace. Their duties included not only tax collection but also ensuring that the local economy remained stable. For instance, during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, prefecti were instrumental in implementing new tax measures intended to support the massive public works projects initiated by the emperor. Their ability to communicate effectively with local communities was vital, as failure to do so could lead to unrest and tax evasion. Additionally, the role of kleroi, the assigned tax collectors, cannot be understated. These individuals were often local citizens who were tasked with collecting taxes on behalf of the state. They operated under the watchful eye of the prefectus but were often subject to the populace's ire as they enforced tax collection. A notable kleros from the 9th century, named Eustathius of Amasie, was reputed for his harsh methods of collection, which included public shaming and confiscation of goods. His story, though not widely known, illustrates the tensions that could arise between tax collectors and citizens. ###Specific case studies with dates. To better illustrate the Byzantine tax collection system, we can examine several case studies that highlight specific events and changes in tax procedures over time. 1. the tax reforms of Emperor Diocletian, 284 to 305 CE. Diocletian's reign marked a significant shift in tax policy. Facing financial strains from military expenditures, he instituted the Edict on Maximum Prices in 301 CE, which attempted to control inflation and stabilize the economy. This edict also had implications for tax collection, as it set price ceilings on goods and services, thereby indirectly affecting the taxable income of citizens. The implementation of this edict required a robust system of local tax officials to ensure compliance, leading to an increase in bureaucratic oversight. 2. The land tax reforms of Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE. Under Justinian I, the land tax system underwent substantial changes. The Capitatio Judicia, introduced in 528 CE, required landowners to pay taxes based on the number of people working on their land rather than the land itself. This reform aimed to increase revenue while encouraging agricultural productivity. The challenges of implementing this system were significant, as local collectors had to accurately assess the number of laborers, which often resulted in disputes and allegations of corruption. 3. The tax revolt of 1066. A notable case study occurred during the reign of Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes, when a severe tax burden led to widespread discontent. In 1066, a revolt broke out in the region of Asia Minor, where peasants protested against the exorbitant taxes imposed to fund military campaigns against the Seljuk Turks. The rebellion was met with a swift military response, but it highlighted the fragile relationship between the state and its subjects regarding taxation. The aftermath of the revolt prompted a temporary reassessment of tax policies, illustrating how unrest could lead to changes in administrative practices. 4. The taxation under the Comnenian dynasty, 1081 to 1185 CE. The Comnenian emperors faced the challenge of financing military campaigns against external threats while managing domestic economic stability. Under Alexios I Komnenos, a new tax known as the trithing was introduced in 1081 CE, which divided land tax into 3 parts, each assessed differently based on local conditions. This system was designed to be more equitable, taking into account the varying agricultural productivity across regions. However, its implementation was fraught with difficulties, with local officials often resisting the changes due to fear of losing their power and influence. Comparative analysis with other regions. When comparing Byzantine tax collection procedures to those of contemporaneous regions, several key differences and similarities emerge. The Byzantine Empire, which was heavily influenced by Roman administrative practices, had a centralized system that aimed for uniformity across its vast territories. This contrasts sharply with the more fragmented and decentralized systems seen in regions such as Western Europe during the early Middle Ages. For example, in the Holy Roman Empire, tax collection was often left to local lords, who exercised considerable autonomy. This feudal system led to inconsistencies in tax rates and collection methods, creating a patchwork of taxation that varied from one lordship to another. In contrast, the Byzantine system sought to maintain a degree of uniformity through imperial decrees and standardized tax assessments. Additionally, the Islamic caliphates during the same period employed a different approach to taxation known as the jizya, a tax levied on non-Muslims. This system allowed for a degree of religious tolerance as it provided non-Muslims with protection and exemption from military service in exchange for payment. The Byzantine Empire, on the other hand, did not have such provisions, leading to tensions with its own religious minorities, particularly during periods of heightened religious fervor. Archaeological findings and interpretations. Archaeological findings have provided valuable insights into Byzantine tax collection procedures, particularly through the discovery of tax-related documents and artifacts. One notable find occurred in the ancient city of Ephesus, where inscriptions detailing tax rates and collection procedures were unearthed. These inscriptions, dating back to the 5th century CE, reveal the complexity of the tax system, including specific rates for various goods such as olive oil and wine. Another significant find was discovered in the ruins of Constantinople, where a cache of papyrus documents was recovered. These documents, believed to be administrative records from the late 6th century, included detailed accounts of tax revenues collected from different regions of the empire. Notably, one document referenced the collection of a land tax, specifying the amounts due from each province. This evidence underscores the bureaucratic nature of tax collection and the reliance on written records to ensure accountability. In addition to written records, artifacts such as weights and measures used in tax assessments have been found at various excavation sites. These tools provide insight into the practical aspects of tax collection, illustrating how local officials measured agricultural produce for tax purposes. The standardization of weights, especially during the reign of Heraclius, 610 to 641 CE, reflects efforts to create a more efficient tax system. Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To further enrich our exploration of Byzantine tax collection, we can present some invented yet plausible primary source quotations attributed to various figures of the time. 1. Eustathius of Amasie, in the collection of taxes, one must wield both the sword and the pen. For it is not only the law that compels payment but the fear of consequence that ensures compliance. This statement encapsulates the dual nature of tax collection, where administrative measures were often backed by the threat of force. 2. Logothete Michael, as the Logothete, I am but a humble servant of the emperor, yet it is my hand that holds the balance of the empire's coffers. Each coin collected is a testament to our strength and stability. This quote reflects the bureaucratic pride often felt by those in administrative roles. 3. Praefectus Alexios, the land is rich, but the people are poor. To fill the treasury, one must tread lightly upon the fields and hearts of the farmers. This perspective highlights the tension between the need for revenue and the welfare of the populace. 4. Anonymous tax collector of the 10th century. In the eyes of the tax collector, every peasant is both a source of wealth and a potential rebel. One must balance the scales of justice and ensure the goodwill of the people, for an empty purse breeds discontent. This statement underscores the precarious position of tax collectors within the social hierarchy. 5. Byzantine chronicler. In the year of our Lord 1066, the cries of the oppressed echoed through the valleys as the weight of taxation bore down upon their backs. The revolt that ensued was but a cry for justice, a reminder that the emperor's coffers are filled by the toil of many. This fictional quote captures the essence of the relationship between the state and its subjects, emphasizing the historical significance of tax-related unrest. #Conclusion. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection system, while often overshadowed by the more dramatic aspects of imperial history, reveals a wealth of information about the administrative practices of the empire. Through the roles of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and invented primary source quotations, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities and challenges faced by tax collectors and the state. The evolution of tax procedures not only reflects the changing needs of the empire but also serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between governance and the governed. As we delve into the dull intricacies of Byzantine tax collection, we find that even the most mundane aspects of history can offer valuable insights into the workings of one of the most enduring empires in history. The dull history of Byzantine tax collection procedures is replete with minutiae that, while seemingly tedious, provides a comprehensive understanding of the complexities and intricacies involved in the administration of taxation during this multifaceted period. The Byzantine Empire, which persisted from the fall of Rome in 476 AD until the conquest by the Ottomans in 1453, had developed an extensive and sophisticated system of tax collection that was both a reflection of its socio-political structure and a means of financing its various military and civic endeavors. To fully appreciate the dullness of Byzantine tax collection, it is essential to explore the various components that constituted its framework. One of the less heralded yet pivotal figures in this convoluted process was the provincial tax collector, often referred to as the strategos. This title, while seemingly illustrious, was frequently associated with the burden of tax collection rather than military glory. Strategoi were charged with the responsibility of ensuring that taxes were collected from the populace within their jurisdiction, a task that often placed them at odds with their fellow citizens. The strategos had to navigate a labyrinthine bureaucracy that involved various local officials, such as the protonotarios, who oversaw the financial records, and the demos, or local councils, which sometimes resisted the imposition of taxes. In terms of specific case studies, one can examine the tax collection practices during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, who ruled from 527 to 565 AD. Justinian's reign is marked by ambitious building projects and military campaigns, necessitating a robust revenue stream. In 535 AD, the emperor issued a series of edicts aimed at reforming the tax collection system. Notably, these reforms included the Pragmatic Sanction, which sought to standardize tax rates across the empire. This initiative, however, was met with mixed reactions. In the city of Antioch, for instance, local collectors were accused of inflating tax assessments, leading to widespread unrest and a series of protests that were ultimately quelled through military intervention. The complaints recorded in the annals of the time reveal a fascinating yet tedious landscape of grievances about tax rates, which were often described in excruciating detail, such as, "The tax collector hath come upon the populace like a ravenous wolf, demanding tribute with the fervor of a merchant unyielding in his pursuit of gold. A comparative analysis with tax systems in contemporary regions can provide additional context to the Byzantine tax model. In contrast to the Byzantine Empire's relatively centralized approach to taxation, which relied heavily on local officials to enforce imperial mandates, the Anglo-Saxon model, for instance, utilized a more decentralized system. The Anglo-Saxons employed a network of local lords who collected taxes on behalf of the king, with varying degrees of success depending on the fidelity of the lords to their sovereign. In the Byzantine system, the central government exerted greater control over tax collection, a method that could lead to a more cohesive fiscal policy but also bred resentment among local populations. Moreover, archaeological findings have shed light on the Byzantine taxation system, particularly through the discovery of tax rolls and financial records inscribed on papyrus and parchment. Excavations in places like the ancient city of Oxyrhynchus, which was a hub of administrative activity, have yielded documents detailing tax obligations, assessments, and the various exemptions granted to specific groups, such as the clergy or certain established trade guilds. These documents, while dry and often repetitive in nature, offer invaluable insight into the bureaucratic processes at play. They reveal, for instance, that tax assessments could vary widely based on the local economy's status, with one inscription stating, "In the year of the reign of our Lord, 541, the yields of grain were low, and thus the tax upon the land shall be reduced by 1/30th part, lest the common folk be driven to despair." Furthermore, primary source quotations, while invented yet plausible, can illuminate the sentiment surrounding tax collection during this era. A fictitious tax collector might lament, "Alas, how heavy a yoke do we bear, for the emperor demands his due, and the people, burdened by the weight of their labors, look upon me with scorn, as if I were the very specter of oppression." Such statements encapsulate the dual nature of tax collection as both an administrative necessity for the empire and a source of discontent among the populace. In addition to the strategos, other minor historical figures played crucial roles in the Byzantine tax collection procedures. For example, the logothetes, or treasurers, were responsible for maintaining accurate financial records and ensuring that the taxes collected were properly accounted for. These individuals often found themselves at the intersection of imperial bureaucracy and local governance. The logothetes were known to have faced considerable pressure from both the central government and local populations, leading to a life fraught with tension. A plausible quote attributed to a logothetes could read, "In my office, I am but a scribe of misery, recording the tribulations of the people while the coffers of the emperor grow heavy with gold." Moreover, tax collection in Byzantine times was not merely a matter of financial exchange, it was also deeply intertwined with social hierarchies and power dynamics. The wealthy elite often sought to leverage their influence to secure tax exemptions or reductions, while the lower classes bore the brunt of fiscal responsibility. Interestingly, the Byzantine tax system included provisions for land taxes, poll taxes, and even taxes on specific goods, such as salt and textiles, leading to a complex web of obligations that could overwhelm even the most diligent of tax collectors. One intriguing aspect of Byzantine tax collection was the implementation of the indition, a 15-year cycle that determined tax assessments and obligations. This cyclical approach not only standardized taxation but also allowed for periodic adjustments based on economic fluctuations. The first Indite-Ion cycle is often cited as beginning in 312 AD, and its effects reverberated throughout the empire for centuries. The concept of Indite-Ion, while seemingly straightforward, involved meticulous record-keeping and constant reassessment of the economic landscape, making it a tedious task for those involved in its administration. In conclusion, the Byzantine tax collection procedures were characterized by a convoluted and tedious system that involved a multitude of actors, from local collectors to imperial treasurers, all operating within a framework designed to maximize revenue for the state while managing local discontent. The historical figures involved, such as the strategos and logothetes, played instrumental yet often thankless roles in this process. Case studies, particularly those from the reign of Justinian I, reveal the persistent issues stemming from tax collection, while comparative analyses with other regions highlight the unique challenges faced by the Byzantine system. Archaeological findings and primary source quotations, albeit hypothetical, provide a glimpse into the daily realities of tax collection, underscoring the intricate and often dull nature of Byzantine fiscal policy. Through this exhaustive exploration, one can appreciate, albeit with a heavy yawn, the complexities that underpinned one of history's most enduring empires. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our tranquil journey through the often overlooked narrative of Byzantine tax collection procedures. We have traversed the winding paths of history, peeling back the layers of time to reveal a system that was, in its own way, both intricate and essential to the stability of an empire. From the early days of taxation based on land and wealth to the more sophisticated methods that emerged as the Byzantine Empire expanded, we've explored how these practices were intertwined with the daily lives of its citizens, shaping the very fabric of society. As we reflected on the meticulous processes and the various figures that played pivotal roles in this historical account, we realized that even the most mundane aspects of governance can carry echoes of human experience. The diligent tax collectors, the anxious farmers, the bustling markets, all of these elements came together to tell a larger story about life in a time that may seem distant yet remains relevant in our understanding of civilization today. With this soothing narrative, I hope you found a moment of calm and perhaps even a gentle reminder of the balance that history seeks to maintain in our lives. The Byzantine Empire, with its complexities and challenges, reminds us that systems of order are often necessary to foster peace and prosperity. We may not have lived through those times, but we can. As you prepare to drift off into a restful slumber, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to you for joining me on this journey. Your presence here adds warmth to these tales of yesteryears, and I hope the soothing cadence of our exploration has brought you comfort and clarity. Should you wish to revisit this soothing history again, know that you can replay this video whenever you desire, allowing the gentle whispers of the past to guide you back into tranquility. Now, as the world outside quiets down and the stars begin to twinkle softly in the night sky, I wish you deep, restorative sleep. May your dreams be filled with peace, and may you awaken refreshed and renewed, ready to embrace the day ahead. Remember, you are safe, and the calmness of this moment is yours to keep. Good night, dear listeners. May your night be filled with serenity and your heart with warmth. Sweet dreams await you.